There's a lot of confusion and different opinions around guarantors. If you're not familiar, a guarantor is someone, usually a friend or family member, who agrees to cover the rent if the tenant doesn't pay. Guarantors are typically used when a tenant can't pass referencing on their own, and a guarantor is essentially vouching for them financially. There are 3 key points that I want to cover about guarantors. Number 1, if a tenant passes referencing on their own, there's no need for a guarantor. I've had landlords ask for a guarantor anyway, but it doesn't really make sense. The checks that you run on a guarantor are exactly the same checks that you run on a tenant. In fact, if a tenant passes referencing on their own, they'd also qualify to be someone else's guarantor. So by asking a guarantor in these situations, it just adds friction to the process and can make tenants feel like you don't trust them. Number 2, a guarantor shouldn't be used to mask a bad tenant. If a tenant has had serious credit issues, like missed payments, defaults, or unpaid rent, I can use a guarantor to pass referencing, but the real question is, why would you want to? You can already see from the tenant's history that they haven't been paying bills. Adding a guarantor doesn't suddenly make that risk go away. Now, we're not totally rigid. If the tenants had minor issues like missed parking fines or something small, and you feel like they deserve the benefit of the doubt, that's when a guarantor makes sense. It's a backup, like belt and braces, not a way to ignore the red flags. And number 3, we don't accept guarantors to bypass affordability checks. This is a big one. A lot of agents allow tenants to use guarantors if they don't meet affordability, which usually means their annual income is less than 30 times the monthly rent. But I don't understand the logic. If a tenant clearly doesn't earn enough to afford the property, then they shouldn't be renting it, guarantor or not. In fact, I think the affordability threshold should be slightly higher, especially on the low end of the market. When you do the maths, once rented and bills are paid, there's often not enough money left for someone to live. And that links back to something I touched on earlier with damp and mold issues. In the vast majority of cases we dealt with, damp and mold problems were made worse because the tenants couldn't afford to heat the property. Now, of course, mold isn't always due to affordability, but renting to people who clearly can't afford to be there increases the chances of these kinds of problems from happening. That's why meeting the affordability in their own right should be a non-negotiable. If you want to know more about this, as well as everything else you need to know to rent your property out the right way, check the link in my bio to get free access to my ultimate letting guide.